Okay, here's the recap. Week 41. We met again at 5:30. Even though the week before we were supposed to meet, whatever. 27 people. Next week we're back at 1 to 3 p. or 3 to 5 p.m. So be at the Creek and Cave next week at 3 if you want to partake in the workshop. So this is our second week on roasting and roast battles and writing roast jokes, writing insults in clever and effective ways. We had a guest guide this week, Jessica Mesitano. Mesitano? And so I just real quick did about 10 or 15 minutes reviewing what we did the week before because most people weren't there. Basically that there are 5 sections of a roast that you need to think about. The first is you need to be aware of the social contract that's operating in that moment, in that setting. And they all have social contracts, whether it's, hey, we want you to be as harsh as possible and really insult people deeply, or we just want light, friendly roast, nothing hardcore, nothing racist, nothing too harmful. But there's always a social contract, and you need to know what it is. If you transgress that social contract, you'll be told by the audience and often by the judges. Second is to pick a target. Somebody, something. It doesn't really matter what you roast. A roast is just a flow of insults, negative comments, negative takes on anything. It can be a place, literally. There's a lot of insults about states. A lot of states have joke traditions. Universities have joke traditions where they attack each other. UT and Texas A&M love jokes about each other. But basically it has to have flaws. It has to be things to attack. Failures, crimes, deviances, anything that you can go after. Third, gather information. You need as much specific information as you can possibly get in order to write good roast jokes and good insults. And to get good information, that usually means you need to talk directly to the person, or you need to do really hardcore internet research, or you need to know them for a while. And that's not always easy, but the more information you can gather, the better your jokes are. Fourth, pick an area, a specific area that you want to insult. A lot of times roast battles and things go right after appearance and your demographics. So what's your race? What's your gender? What's your age? What's your job? Things like that, because those are generics that already carry negativity in them. And so you need to pick an area. And if you get more sophisticated, you can go up into deeper things about people's politics and whatever. But typically it starts with appearance. And finally, number 5, you need to do artful writing on your jokes. Again, roasts are probably the most artfully constructed jokes we have, because there's something about where heavy insults and deep cuts and high conflict meet high art that really works well. And for people who like roast and roast battles, that's where it all happens. Is in that last moment, you've done everything else. You've got the insults, you've picked your targets, you've got good information. Can you write it into a very well-crafted, artful joke? And there's so many literary figures and rhetorical figures that you can use to up the art factor. Things like rhyming, rhythm, word collisions where you create new words, all sorts of things, imagery, alliteration, all these different things that you can put into the artfulness of the joke itself. And really good roast writers are usually really good joke writers, and often really good joke writers in general, because they're good at using all these different tools. So I went over that, and then I real quickly said there's 3 types of roasts that you can think about. There's you writing roasts all the time, negative about celebrities, insults about famous people or famous places, and those can flow into your stand-up, and they definitely flow into every night monologues for talk shows. Again, Stephen Colbert just got kicked off the air basically because he, attacked Trump for 10 straight years with really good jokes. And Trump has some power, so he went behind the scenes and got rid of him. Then there's writing jokes to be used by other people on the roast stage itself, where you're just hired as a writer and you're filling out, a quiver of arrows that they can use when they go hunting for these other celebrities, like the roast of Kevin Hart. And finally, writing insults for roast battles, which you get to deliver personally, face to face, which changes things because now you're there with another human being And you get judged also on how you perform, your character, all those things, versus the other kinds where you're just an anonymous attacker. You're just writing really anonymous good jokes. But roast battle's different thing. You get right up into it. And I haven't done that much roast battling. I've done a lot of battling with audiences, a lot of heckle battles, which I enjoy. But then I have much more power than they do. In roast battles, you have equal power until somebody starts to ascend. So our guest lecturer, teacher, workshopper, guider, Jessica came in. She did a really good job of drawing people right into the world of roast battling. And different scenes have different types of roast battles. Austin has a fairly big roast battle scene. I think partially because it has a big edgelord scene. And they like to work the dark underbelly of things. And so that lends right into insults. She's really quick. She's originally from Chicago. She has a lot of background in this. And she did a good job getting everybody right into it. And basically brought people up on stage, and she gave out a list of her, an outline of how she does roast battle writing and some of the things to watch out for and some of the things to avoid. And I put that list into the show notes so you can check out what her list is. But it was really good. It was essentially, how do you create not the person to insult, but a caricature, a cartoon version of that person to insult, because it seems to be less harmful. The social contract is wide open when you're going after caricatures. So instead of talking about somebody like who they really are and really insulting them deeply, which I kind of do when people heckle me, you create a cartoon version of it, whatever it is. And we had a guy go up and he was a bus driver, like a party bus driver and a travel bus driver and things like that. And so people went out after the bus thing, and he had some kind of crazy boots on. They went after that, but he basically became a bus driver caricature. And then you can sort of go after all the bus things and the working class things, and like, this is not a very good job. And I was talking about, like, Jessica also brought up that you can do pop culture references mixed in. I'm like, yeah, the Dave Matthews thing, which people tend to still remember about his tour bus dumping, all of its excrement into the river in Chicago, which became famous. You could pull that stuff out. So her first thing was turn them into a character instead of a real person. And then she talked a lot about using literary techniques. And she talked about alliteration and references and hyperbole and juxtaposition and rhyming, which are hard to sort of pick up verbally when you're learning this stuff. People were writing things down, and you can chat GPT all of those. Just look up rhetorical figures and literary figures. That's what they're called, figures of speech, figures of writing. And it'll give you a whole list, and there's hundreds. And they're all very useful. Depends on which ones kind of work best for you. I think one of the things Jessica talked about, and I noticed this when she was doing roasting in the workshop, is she's really good at wordplay. So changing a letter, creating a new word from two words, and flowing that into the insult. People are always impressed by that, but it's literally just technique. And there's a bunch of little sub-mechanics within wordplay that you can easily learn. You just gotta get your brain to now do it in the moment. You can intellectually understand it. The challenge is always, how do you get your brain to do it in the moment, especially in this kind of situation where it's high conflict. There's a lot of tension, a lot of drama, because it's two different people going after each other, and there's stakes. If you screw up, if you go too harsh, or one of your jokes doesn't work, you feel yourself drop, and the audience drops you down. Then you got to try to come back up with the next joke. So it's a kind of interesting in that way, in that it's a less powerful form of performance than stand-up, meaning that the performer has less power until they get good at it, and then they start hitting somebody with really good lines, and everybody's like, whoa, and they just raise them up on a pedestal. And it's like, you walk off stage, I won. The glory of my insults won out. Anyway, interesting world. We then broke up and did some pairs where people got to interview each other and get some information, write some light insults, and play around with that. We put people back on stage, and there's probably 6 or 7 different times where we had 2 people, or at least usually 2 people on stage, and either the audience, the workshop class, was writing roast for them or was roasting them. So you did get a lot of experience trying to write insults. And some people were really good at it. Like there were some really, well-placed zings as we went through this process and did the different exercises. So it was fun. Next week, this was our second week on roast, so we're gonna do one more week that's kind of about roast. One of the things I suggest is for people to interview each other, pick somebody, from the workshop and go through the process this week, where you can actually interview each other, get some information, write insults, and we'll do a little light roast battle next weekend. Again, it's weird because the workshop is typically positive. I don't like to create a negative environment for learning. And so most people, there were even people who told me, I don't think I can come, I want to come next week because I don't want to do negatives, which is perfectly fine, but it's also, they'll be very light. I think most people understand the social contract of the comedy accelerator, which is, hey, we're all in this trying to ascend. We're trying to help each other, we're trying to get better, and we're trying to, get pro work. So I think that'll still dominate. But you never know, people transcend, break social contracts all the time. And comics are particularly good at it. Give them a limit and they're like, oh, that's where the fun is. So we'll do that next week. I also talk about writing insults in general, negative comedy, because it is very, very useful and it's a payable job. A lot of, shows and companies and things like that, and politics, it's about insulting the other side and trying to lower them and demean them with words. And again, if you look at Trump, really good at it. He nicknames everybody with a simple, very insulting nickname, and then just says it over and over and over and over and over. But he comes from reality shows, and he comes from New York promoter world, where there was a lot of battling. So he's very comfortable with that, and he's got his strategies, he's got his tactics, and they are clearly working very well in the world of politics. So learning how to write negative, even if you don't want to make a living at that, it's a skill you need. Probably 50% of all comedy is negative comedy when you actually start looking at it. Somebody is the butt of the joke. Somebody is taking a zing or a hit in the joke. Even if it's a company or a country or history or whatever, it doesn't really matter. Somebody typically gets hit in the joke a lot of the times. So we'll work on that next week. And then we'll move on from roast after next week. So pop in, have some fun, light insults, clever. As long as they're clever and artful, you can get away with pretty much anything. But the fun part is like even taking a tiny little thing that's really just a tiny flaw in somebody else, and can you still make an artful insult out of it? In some ways, it almost becomes a compliment insult, which you can do. There are really interesting compliment battles that I might have people do. See who can out-compliment the other. And then compliments become sort of backhanded compliments, and they get very interesting very quickly. So we'll play around with that as well. So there you go. That's the recap. See you again next week.